The whole affair started rolling when Maxwell Conroe, a novelist and short story writer, was sought out by the two icons, Poirot and Holmes, to represent their case. The author wrote an open letter to the New York Times opinion pages in support of their claims. Poirot and Holmes seek retribution, now claiming enormous repairs should be paid to them for the mental and physical ailments they suffer from as a result of what they had to endure at the hands of their respective authors whom they helped make famous. The reactions to the opinion piece were overwhelmingly appreciative of it, highlighting the dire state the two famous detectives had landed in. Due to copyright limitations, the original opinion piece cannot be fully reproduced here, but the gist of the case has been captured in this essay all the same. Avid readers of detective stories rarely pause to reflect on what it is the main characters are put through by their creators. It is no secret that both Arthur Conan Doyle, 1859–1930, creator of Victorian sleuth Holmes, and Agatha Christie, 1890–1976, mother of Hercule Poirot, a Belgian private detective, mostly active during the Art Deco period, were sick of their protagonists, long before the final episodes of their brainchildren were issued. But what remained long hidden from the public view is what terrible impact had the prolonged hatred of these authors on their creations. Both Hercule Poirot and Sherlock Holmes were held captive against their own will and were made to perform at the whim of their creators. For Holmes, the initial ordeal lasted 40 years. For Poirot, the early episode lasted over 60 years. Initial and early are used here to emphasize that both characters continue to perform their acts, albeit without the direction of their original creators. When their authors passed, it had been very quiet at first, but then there was again a growing interest in both Holmes and Poirot. But they are not free to do as they please. Their business engagements and movements are tightly guarded by the literary estates of Doyle and Christie, respectively. By now profoundly aged, the ordeal of the two detectives is not over yet. Fallen out with their original creators, Sherlock Holmes and Hercule Poirot have now teamed up to seek retribution for their sufferings. The charges filed against Arthur Conan Doyle, Agatha Christie, and their literary estates include coercion into addiction to substance abuse, psychological torture and sustained cruelty, resulting in a range of ailments including suicidal thoughts due to post-traumatic stress disorder. These charges can be easily corroborated by the detectives' respective longtime aides-de-camp, Watson and Hastings. Increasingly, the famous protagonists no longer trusted their authors, once it became obvious that these had grown tired of creating them. Both Poirot and Holmes are now livid after realizing how long they had to endure uncertainty and unpredictability of their creators. They claim that both Doyle and Christie had taken Edgar Allan Poe, 1809–1849, the principal source of inspiration of their detective stories, way too serious. The authors, at times behaving stepfatherly and stepmotherly toward their protagonists, went as far as projecting Poe's own substance abuse on their respective main characters. Holmes used opiates in quantities as his creator seemed fit for the occasion. Doyle basically was acting as his drug dealer. And Christie dealt Hercule Poirot such bad dieting habits that he was featured in the American Journal of Cardiology as the quintessential role model for someone with advanced coronary heart disease due to prolonged exposure to severe cardiovascular risk factors. Throughout their careers, Holmes indulged in heavy use of opiates and smoking, and Poirot practiced smoking combined with poor eating and drinking habits. An aficionado of detective stories, Maxwell has read all of Doyle's Holmes stories and all of Christie's Poirot's stories. He claims he was approached by apparitions of the two detectives to help them make their case. Maxwell explains he himself stands little to gain from the whole affair, save some free publicity for his own existence as an upcoming author. Maxwell Conroe has advised the complainants to enlist the services of Auguste Dupin, the archetypal detective character invented by Edgar Allan Poe, to build their case. The chivalrous Dupin himself had little to complain and was reluctant to join Poirot and Holmes with a court filing against his creator. Dupin argues that Poe had died under destitute circumstances, and was a different case altogether. Counter to Doyle and Christie, Poe had largely based his investigations on real-life murder cases. When no new cases drew his interest, Poe could not prolong his detective stories featuring Dupin. Always treating Dupin with due reverence, Poe himself was meanwhile consumed by prolonged substance abuse, alcohol and opiates, love sickness and financial ruin, outright poverty. He passed only 40 years old. During the upcoming trials, naturally, Poirot says his claims will be corroborated by Captain Hastings, his longtime confidant, and Mrs. Lemon, his longtime secretary, even calling into the witness stand a reluctant Chief Inspector Japp. For his charges, Holmes did not want to put Watson through the ordeal of being a witness on the impending trial. Instead, Holmes will rely on Inspector Lestrade's testimony. He was formerly with Scotland Yard. But in the end, Watson suggested he may come to his good friend's aid and can be expected to testify as well. And, who knows, Sherlock's deadly adversary Moriarty may make a surprise appearance, now finally corroborating that, yes, he was instrumental in the hands of Doyle to kill Holmes, only to see him resurrected again, by Doyle. Writers indeed now may need to become more careful in how they treat and portray their main characters. Both Arthur Conan Doyle and Agatha Christie now leave little doubt about the contentious relationship with their respective star characters. Their authors felt overshadowed by their own story heroes. Concerning Hercule Poirot and Sherlock Holmes, each of the writers who created them had made it quite clear on multiple occasions, they had increasingly grown sick and tired of their characters. Undoubtedly, Auguste Dupin will get to the core of the problem, and he will lay bare what remained unseen, or rather overlooked, for so long.